Our society carries a very quiet assumption that adulthood has a destination, and that destination looks like having children. If you don't arrive there, people don't just ask why. They quietly wonder, is something wrong? But modern psychology and sociology tell a very different story. Because people who consciously choose not to have children are not broken, not selfish, and not lacking. They are simply building a different kind of life. First, we need to clarify something important. In international research, not having children doesn't always mean the same thing. Childless refers to people without children due to circumstances asked. Infertility, lack of resources, or timing. Childfree refers to people who deliberately choose not to have children, even though they are fully capable of becoming parents. Sociologists have emphasized this distinction since the late 20th century. This is not about avoiding responsibility. It is a long-term decision, made after carefully thinking through what parenthood truly demands. Not impulsive, not immature, but deeply considered. And this is not a fringe phenomenon. A large study from Michigan State University shows that in the US, among adults without children, the share of those who say they never want children rose from about 14% in 2002 to nearly 29% in 2023. That's almost double in just over 20 years. In other words, choosing not to have children is no longer rare. It is becoming a clear and growing trend in modern American society. So what leads both men and women to this decision? A Pew Research Center survey of Americans under 50 found that nearly half of adults without children say they do not plan to have any in the future. Among them, 64% of women and 50% of men say very clearly, "I simply don't want children." Other commonly cited reasons include the high cost of raising a child, wanting to focus on career and personal life, concerns about economic and social instability, and increasingly, worries about climate change and the future of the world. This shows that the decision is not emotional or impulsive, but grounded in realistic, long-term thinking. A common assumption is that people who don't want children must have psychological issues, but research does not support this. Multiple studies published in international academic journals show that men and women who choose not to have children do not have higher rates of depression, anxiety, or attachment disorders than the general population. Their overall psychological well-being is comparable to that of parents. The difference lies elsewhere. They tend to have a high need for autonomy, a strong sense of control over their own lives, and a long-term mindset and responsibility for their choices. They don't ask, "What does society expect me to do?" They ask, "How can I live well, honestly, and sustainably?" This is the question society often avoids. If they don't have children, what do they do? Sociological research paints a very clear picture. Many work hard. They invest deeply in their careers, not only for money, but for contribution and personal meaning. They care for others in different ways. Aging parents, siblings, friends, chosen families built beyond blood ties. Many have pets, dogs, cats, or other animals that require daily care, patience, and presence, not as substitutes for children, but as relationships free from social expectations. They also enjoy life intentionally, traveling when they choose, pursuing creative work, learning, resting without guilt. Their lives are not empty. They are simply structured differently. There's a familiar phrase people hear all the time: "You'll regret it later." But research on life satisfaction tells a more nuanced story. There is no clear evidence that people without children are less happy than parents. Parents often report strong, meaning tied to the parenting role, but also higher levels of daily stress. Child-free adults often report lower daily stress, and meaning drawn from multiple sources: work, relationships, creativity, and community. Meaning does not come only from raising another human being. It also comes from living in alignment with your values. That said, people who don't want children often face invisible pressure. They are questioned, doubted, told they will change their mind. Psychologists call this normative social stress. Stress that comes not from the choice itself, but from society's reaction to it. Over time, many say this pressure fades. What remains is clarity. When we zoom out, choosing not to have children is not just a personal story. It reflects a broader, inevitable shift in modern society. People live longer. Education takes more years. Living costs are higher. Gender roles are more flexible. And individuals have more agency than ever before. In this context, having children is no longer a default next step, but a conditional choice. As societies develop, more people ask, "Do I truly want this?" instead of doing it simply because they are supposed to. And psychology shows that when real choice exists, life paths naturally become more diverse. So what if someone in your family says they don't want children? The most important thing is not to persuade them to change. It is to listen, not to argue, not to fix, but to understand how deeply they have thought about it. Many people who don't want children have spent years considering this choice in silence, while carrying significant social pressure. What makes them feel safest is not advice, but recognition. I don't have to agree with you, but I respect your choice. Because respecting a life path different from your own is also a form of emotional maturity. Does not mean you don't know how to love. It doesn't mean you fear commitment. And it doesn't mean your life lacks meaning. It simply means you choose to care, build, and contribute in a different form. And psychology reminds us of something essential. A good life is not defined by following a script. It's defined by living in alignment with who you truly are. If you've stayed until the end, these questions may have lived in you too. This channel exists for slow, honest conversations about psychology, society, and different ways of living. If you'd like to stay with these conversations a little longer, you're welcome to stay here. Sometimes, a small subscribe button is simply a quiet way of saying, "I'm not alone in thinking this way." And if this video sparked something in you, feel free to share your thoughts below. No debates, just reflection. We'll keep talking about different life paths and why every one of them deserves respect.